welcome to today's video. So this is going to be a little just sit down chit chat, or really I'm gonna lay in my bed chit chat with my very needy dog about my TMI girl story about my periods now being off of birth control. So if you are not a woman, I would suggest clicking off of this video. Or if talk of periods and blood and cramping and all of that makes you uncomfortable, click off. This is your warning. So if you have been around my channel or have even watched through any of the videos, you would know that back in the beginning of September, I got off of hormonal birth control. So for a long time for 8 years, I was on hormonal birth control between different birth control pills. And then for the last 5 years, I was using a hormonal IUD called Kyleena. Immediately after getting Kyleena, I noticed some side effects that I wasn't quite sure I loved, but I dealt with them for 5 years. It was really like 6 months in that I realized I was having really intense cramping. And it wasn't like a monthly thing, because I actually lost my period when I was on that birth control method, which I loved. I still don't like bleeding. So it was a nice, welcoming thing to not be bleeding and being on my period. But I was having like intense cramping to the point where I would like throw up because I was in so much pain. And then I only really realized it afterwards, but I felt very psychotic, to say the least. Oh, big yawn. I was just very low sex drive, I think, because of the hormones, the artificial hormones, as well as Ranger, back up, as well as the just random things I was noticing, and a lot of it I at the time was chalking up to stress, because I was in college and I was working and I got married. You know, there was a lot going on in my life at that time. There still is a lot going on in my life, but it's significantly less than it was prior to switching birth controls and whatever. Hold on. So, since getting off birth control, off of hormonal birth control, I switched over to a copper IUD called the Paragard. And that IUD is supposed to stop me from getting pregnant. But it's no artificial hormones, so I ovulate like normal. I have my cycle like I typically would. So that's been an interesting thing to adjust to. Having a cycle and having all these different hormones. I noticed, not immediately off the bat, but I have noticed an increase in my libido, which is nice. I definitely felt a lot of strange swinging of emotions as I was going through getting off birth control and my body adjusting, and it still is. But I definitely feel far better now that it's been 3 months since being on hormonal birth control. So that's nice. I definitely... Oh, thanks, Ranger. Move. I had my first period. 63 days was how long my first cycle was. So technically I cycled through 2 cycles to be able to get my period. It was about 2 months in before I got my period back. and that one was a little strange. I had some spotting, like, obviously right after I got the IUD placed for like a week, and then no period after the first month, and I was like, oh, I kind of fully expected to have my period back immediately. And then it took another month. I started my first period on November 6th, and it lasted 8 days. Started off for the first 2 days like super light, like I was using the light tampons. And then the next day, the third day, was like a medium-sized period. So it was probably the heaviest I ever typically bled. And then everything got so much worse. I started bleeding through tampons when I was using like a medium, like a regular tampon. I bled through that. I was wearing pads, and I swear I was filling up those pads so fast. And then very TMI, I got to the point where I was bleeding so heavily that when I lifted my leg, like I propped it up on the toilet so that I could have a better vantage point to put the tampon in, and I bled onto the floor, and it freaked me out. Called my doctor, and she was like, look, as long as it's not you're going through an entire pad or a super tampon within an hour, then you're okay. But she was like, if you want to come in, just come in, and we'll try to get you booked so that we can make sure the IUD's in place. Period ended 2 days later after being so heavy, and then it got lighter the next day, and then so light the next day, and then it was done. So I was like, okay, cool. And then from there, I used my Aura ring to track my temperature in the mornings, and the Natural Cycles app to track my periods, but also, like, I like the fertility aspect to be able to track when I ovulate. And it's still working on learning my body to track my ovulation. So it couldn't track it the first time I had my period. This time, it almost completely confirmed it at one point. It was just like, I think waiting for what typically happens, which is your body temperature stays elevated for a certain point in time. My body temperature was elevated, but it didn't stick for more than two days, I think 2 or 3 days, and then it dipped back down. And so it was trying to confirm ovulation for a while. Then it finally confirmed ovulation and said that my period was supposed to start December 20th, which is actually today. I ended up starting on Monday, and I noticed there was some like light bleeding, almost. I logged it originally as spotting, and then later changed it to light period, because then it became more than just spotting by the end of the day. The next day I was like, oh yeah, I'm on my period. I was cramping. The cramping was far worse this cycle than it was last time. The cramping was bad last time, but this time I like legitimately couldn't sleep. At one point I felt super sick. I just felt it was not fun. But I went from being super heavy to then my period coming towards a close, and kind of the way that it started, where it was like bloody discharge and like spotting almost. So like right now I'm still logging it as a light period, but I don't even have a panty liner or pad or anything in, because it's just very light bleeding, which I imagine could also pick up and become heavier. So we'll see. But that is kind of the update on where I'm at. My first period was definitely scary. There was a lot of emotions. I was wholly unprepared for it. Second time, I was a little bit more prepared. I knew what experience I had the month before, and so I was like, okay. And it was actually a month and a half almost. My cycle this time was about 40 days. So, I don't know if my cycles will become like the typical 28 days-ish, 30 days. I think it can even stretch out to 35 and still be a normal cycle. But I know it's going to take some time to adjust and get to that point, so I'm not freaking out about it. I'm just kind of going off of what my app is saying when it's tracking. And then checking. I have a couple more pregnancy tests to take just to check when my period doesn't come and I need to just look at it and go, okay, I'm not pregnant, because it's stressful for sure, especially because this IUD has no artificial hormones. So I'm sitting here trying to like make sure I'm not getting pregnant, because that's just not where we're at right now. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Anybody who is planning on making the switch or thinking about it, I hope this helped bring some information to your light, and I hope that didn't scare you. Every person is different when they're getting on and off birth control, so all I can give is my experience. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.